So I'm super excited because we have Julie Mossler here, who is the CMO of MetaPlex. So thanks, Julie, for joining us today.
Thanks, I'm so excited.
So Julie has quite the background. Before joining MetaPlex, she was the founder and CMO at Common Fortune, the interim CMO at Paxos, the executive VP of global marketing at Sportradar, the head of brand and global marketing at Waze, and also the head of global comms at Groupon. So Julie, you have quite the reputation.
Oh, thanks. I miss my days at Google, so it's really cool to be connecting with everybody again.
Yeah, so thanks for coming back. We like to start out by getting a little familiar with kind of your journey before going into Web3, because obviously you've had quite like the executive marketing career path. So maybe you can share a little bit about some of the highlights that you think helped kind of shape your career as it is today, and then we can talk about how that transition into Web3 happened.
Yeah, thanks. I think, as anybody reflects on their career, a place like Google gives you so much opportunity that it's really on you to figure out what the through line is and where you want to take your career path. So for me, as I was reflecting on, my sort of gradual transition into Web3, I realized that it was kind of the culmination of all of these other things I had been doing in the last, 10 years of my life or 15 years. So what I love is communicating to consumers and to the market what's next and helping teach them different types of technology that they've never seen before and that inspires awe or makes their life easier. So I left corporate communications and the PR agency world to go to a little startup that was called Groupon. And at the time it was a charity. And there I just learned pretty quickly how to work really scrappily. And we were the fastest growing company of all time. So you would come into work and then the next Monday your desk would be gone and we would have hired 200 new people just in the span of a week. And so, yeah, like wow. Working at that speed is free speed, right? Which is the space is just constantly evolving and you can kind of have a long-term plan, but a short-term mission, or I'm sorry, a long-term mission and a short-term plan. Mm-hmm. And so from there, I had the chance to go to Waze, and that was where I really moved from communications to marketing. And I've been in marketing ever since because I liked seeing the impact of strategic marketing on the growth of a business. But I think, as I look at the things that I've done, going into COVID, I felt very disenfranchised with the tech industry. And I just sort of didn't see a place for myself. I had done these community-driven startups, and everybody tells you that you only get one Waze or you only get one YouTube or one experience to come in early and scale something. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't see a place for myself where I could really drive value. And COVID was a time for me to sit and learn about crypto, which was something I had always found very intimidating. And it turns out there's a lot of different flavors of Web3. Crypto is just one piece and NFTs are another piece there. And I discovered it was actually a lot like Waze. It was very community driven. Waze is built by product volunteers around the world, and most of Web3 is free open source software. And so there just was a lot in my background that culminated to make this a logical place for me where I could bring some structure from Web3 while also building for the future.
Gotcha. When you talk about Groupon, like I see so many similarities between trying to like triage a multitude of like verticals with like whether they're merchants or customers or businesses or brands, and how that certainly would, I guess, scale linear to like what's happening in Web3. Would you say that is that similar? Like, am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah, I think it's similar. And there's also these competing priorities, right? Because you're trying to develop this new type of commerce. So with Groupon, it was collective action. Well, there's collective action in Web3 as well, because you have voting structures like DAOs, which are supposed to be really disseminating power to the people that are building these networks. And that might not be totally compliant with the way someone like a McDonald's or a Starbucks might expect to engage with the Web3 community. They want to speak to a corporation and a marketing manager and then shake hands and write a contract. And that's not really how this stuff works at the moment. And so learning to juggle just multiple audiences and telling consistent stories that ladder back up to one narrative is something I've had to do quite a bit of, and it feels very relevant here.
Wow. Okay. So I really want to hear like the aha moment when you like jumped into Web3, but I don't want to miss what you just mentioned, which I think is super interesting. So tell us more about that, because I find that in Web3, or let's just say, maybe the crypto community, the amount of like parallel conversations or channels of communication, like it just seems like there's an abundance. How do you manage that? I think for someone who has to be probably aware of them all and being able to engage with different altitudes of people, that must get super hectic. Like, is there an
Yeah.
answer for this?
No, I think you set your boundaries, and I think this can happen to you in Web 2 as well if you've ever stared into like the abyss of your inbox, and we have all these different tools to manage social media, but the truth is when I jumped into an NFT role, I had customers on Telegram, and internally we talk on Signal, and then we have WhatsApp, Slack, a lot of other project management stuff that I'm thinking of. And so I think setting your own boundaries and just saying, this is where you can find me. And I'm still trying to teach the organization. I think some of the skills I learned at Google, which was to put together product briefs and centralize information that everyone has to know. And if you miss a Slack, you can't just be expected to know that information. And it's tricky. It's not really the way that culture works right now.
Totally. I often feel like I have the most like ephemeral brain, or like I have short-term storage. Like if I don't use this information in 24 hours, it's just gone forever.
Yeah.
So, which is bad. So I'm curious, you mentioned 2 years ago, the pandemic started, and then you started to tap into crypto and Web3 a bit. Was there like an aha moment where you found something or talked to somebody and you're like, oh my God, this is like the future?
I was thinking about leaving tech. As I mentioned, I was getting tapped for a lot of things I had already done. So a lot of mobility and a lot of e-commerce and things in entertainment, and just nothing felt net new to me. And I didn't think I could really drive the value that I had in the past. So I just sat with what I had done and what I might want to do next. And I got really lucky because an advisor was talking to Paxos, which is one of the largest infrastructure providers, helping move banking from the archaic infrastructure that they have now over to Web3 and blockchain. And so I was lucky that they needed an interim CMO, and I did a lot of learning there. I didn't have a crypto background, except I was a retail user, just investing on the side.
Yeah.
But I think the structures of building a department, centralizing messages, and also building funnels to move your customers or your audiences through a communication channel is something that is universal and worked very well there. So I'm very grateful to them because I learned a lot about stable coins and crypto and regulation, and they really are best in class.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think that's super important to have that comprehensive like exposure like you're describing. So then when you, so why MetaPlex? Like what was like interesting about that project? Why did you want to join them?
So I guess the aha moment for me then was that I looked at the things that I had done and what I was passionate about, and I was really missing the creator. And I love music and street art and culture in general. And it dawned on me that my nighttime habit of investing in NFTs, and my friends and I had launched an NFT project that did not go well, by the way, but I just thought it was so fun and interesting. And that was what I was missing. Was I'm more of a consumer marketer than I am enterprise. And so MetaPlex is the infrastructure for a lot of this stuff, and we do quite a bit of enterprise conversation, but it's all in honoring the creator and the builder. And that was the part I was missing, was the direct relationship with the customer. Whereas with Paxos, their customers are people like Novi and Facebook and PayPal. And so just a little bit bigger than I like to go.
Gotcha. So let's update everyone. For those of us on the call that aren't familiar with MetaPlex, may have heard of it. No, it's a huge project. It's very, very impressive. So maybe give us like a little taste of what it is for people that are listening.
For sure. Do you think we could show that slide with the projects on it?
Let's do it. Okay.
because this is why we do what we do. I just want you to see just the color and the varied faces in this ecosystem that we call MetaPlex.
All right. Sure.
So yeah, so there's our community. So MetaPlex is the NFT standard on the Solana blockchain. So when you create an NFT, you're using our open source protocol. And the metadata is what allows you to know what to do with that NFT, what type of utility it has. When you trade or sell your NFT, you want people to know what characteristics and if it was rare and how it relates to the rest of the collection and to the rest of the market. So we've built this metadata standard, but actually MetaPlex is the world's largest NFT ecosystem. So we're actually larger than Ethereum, which is how a lot of people have entered this space, is through something like an OpenSea. But OpenSea is really one of our customers, and they use one of our products to stand up their marketplace. And so, or for Solana, I should say. So when it comes to thinking about NFTs and Solana, MetaPlex spun out of Solana. We're a separate organization. And we are an organization of builders and creators. So this open source free technology is what people use if they are 3D artists or muralists or cartoonists. Up on the right, you see Belugies, and they actually just donated a total of $250,000 to charity. We also have really underrepresented groups. So we have women, we have Asian creators, Black, rural, inner city, I mean, you name it. I really feel like this community has something for everyone, and that's not always what you think of when you see these NFT projects that are flipping for tens of thousands of dollars. Our vibe is much more open to everybody.
That is so cool. I love that. And I think you mentioned, are these some of the recent things that have happened, or like, are there any other milestones that you're really proud of?
Yeah, so we just announced our 1 year sort of first year celebration and anniversary. So in 1 year alone, MetaPlex generated $1 billion in revenue directly to creators.
Wow.
And then on the secondary market, that looks like $3 billion to creators. And so, you know, when I think about why I'm excited and maybe what I was missing when I was having this, like, you know, dark night of the soul in tech, it was that, you know, we're talking about things that are mission driven, and this meme that you have to be a starving artist for people to appreciate what you create isn't really true. And that's the promise of Web3. People have said for a long time that blockchain can demonstrate provenance, or it allows a creator to build their own business. And that's what's happening here. I mean, there's no middlemen and no fee that has to be taken for you to bring your project to market and walk away with this $3 billion in revenue for the community.
That's really cool. And I like how you say the kind of the ethos and the culture of MetaPlex is different. Do you find that, how has that percolated through the company? Are those values a part of how you operate the business, or are you just finding people who are a little bit more, I guess, more mission driven? Maybe they're more ethical.
Yeah, I mean, our employees, a lot of them are self-described degens. So they come from, you know, these crypto projects or NFT projects where they were founders themselves, or were managing a Discord group and then reached out and said that they wanted to work with us. So it's really humbling to see who the project attracts. And we have folks that have like dropped out of college to work with us and are some of the best coders we've seen. So I think that what is special, and it does remind me a lot of ways, is that every conversation is centered in like, is this good for the builder and is it good for the creator? And that doesn't happen at every company because you're you know, wrangling profit centers or different competing interests.
Wow, that I like that, because you're totally right. As we were talking about the different communication channels of like different altitudes, I find that so often within big companies, we're always prioritizing enterprise customers, like who's writing the biggest check. But clearly this market flips that philosophy around, because you can have a tiny creator that just creates an enormous impact, but you might not know that. So you have to be aware.
And I think that I know that this space is so early that we like to say 99% of NFTs haven't been created yet. And so you can choose what you want to be, and there's room in this space to be the NFT studio that works with big corporations, as you mentioned, and clearly there's money there. But I think focusing on the builder, which is what we've done so far, this developer group, is fascinating because they're actually the ones that guide the roadmap and help define what we build next. And so if you want to have a say in what the future of NFTs is in the next 5 to 15 years, you're doing that in MetaPlex just by being part of our community.
That's really cool. I know there was another slide. Should we go to that one?
Yeah. So just to break down a little bit of what this really looks like. So MetaPlex Foundation oversees the protocol and then the maintenance of that protocol. So that's open source, free technology. Anyone today can use the protocol or build programs on top of that. We'll be using SDKs and APIs for people to be able to stand up their NFT project. Today, NFTs are primarily known as art or profile pics, but there's so many more use cases there that we expect to see in the future. Looking really far down the road, that could look like you using your NFT as your gym membership or your driver's license. But today, it's really being expressed through art and culture. So thinking about our mission then, if the protocol is the base layer, we are then helping different developers and creators build programs on top of that. So you can create your own storefront, you can create your own marketplace, or mint your first collection. So thinking about our mission then, we sort of have 3 audiences that we're really fixated on. First, the developers. We have great relationships there at present. This is always going to be open source, and we regularly put out requests for comment. So that means before we go and build any changes to the protocol that are material, we actually put out that recommendation. We ask the community to weigh in and tell us if that's what they think the priority should be. And then we also apply our best judgment and find a path forward. So these tools here to really explore the full potential of what NFTs can be and explore the utility almost has to be driven by input from the community because they're the ones who have to build on top of it. The second audience is creators. So we separate internally builders and creators, thinking that developers really make up this builder group, but very quickly creators will become builders too. And so if you're an artist or a musician or someone who has this really colorful comic in your mind that you want to share with the world, you deserve to do that through fair economic value. It's up to you to decide if you want to have licensing with that, what the royalties should be. And there shouldn't be any gatekeepers who dictate if you can dispense that content, whatever it is, and how much of that material value you should be able to extract. So ultimately, NFTs come down to this direct two-way relationship with your audience because it's a long-term contract or membership card or agreement between this group of fans or collectors who like what you do. And then lastly, for the collector, it means an awesome shared experience and getting you closer to the things that you love. So if I'm a fan of a musician, I now can get a special track, but also I might be able to get more of an access that you would think from a membership club. So monthly drops or communication from the artist or physical real life experiences. And then of course, on a more broad scale, Web3 means decentralized and shared liquidity. So a marketplace might decide that their brand defines what type of NFTs you should buy there. But really, this decentralization means that what you create can be sold anywhere and that shoppers have a lot of choice.
I'm going to take that. Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you for walking us through those main different groups. One problem I've noticed and that I've also experienced when trying to engage with like the different user groups and collecting feedback is managing those different channels. So how do you do that? Have you had to develop any new strategies to collect feedback and structure conversations with, I would imagine, a really large audience?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I would say marketing is building from scratch. I joined at the end of April. And so a lot of these communication channels feedback loops, postmortems that you see in an org like Google. We just don't have that muscle memory yet. But Twitter primarily is where a lot of this conversation is happening, as is Discord. And recently we started using a tool called Common Room, which kind of reminds me of hiring a social agency that not just looks at sentiment, but can also show us things that are trending in real time from people that we designate as influencers. So that would mean if there were a particularly influential developer in the Solana ecosystem, it would flag to us that he or she had something that was really taking off in terms of commentary, and we could react in real time. And this is a little bit different than kind of the dashboard that you might get from a Web2 agency.
Gotcha. Okay, so it sounds like so there's not so much of like the Discord, Slack, Telegram type of channels. It's more so these, I guess, like management tools that allows you to triage things more effectively.
Yeah, I would say it's a hybrid. Like if we look at our external channels, the general population feedback we get is Twitter and Discord. If we look at partner management, that's where it gets a little unwieldy, and that's the culture of this industry, which is a lot of our Asian partners are on Telegram, some are on Signal. The US folks tend to use Slack and email, and some are overly corporate, which is interesting. So I think having really lockstep communication internally as a team and teaching people that when you get information, you have to digest it and share it that's been a challenge for us, and somewhere we're hoping to improve.
Working with the partners around the world, which ones seem the most engaged and willing to work with you?
That's a really good question. I think that, first of all, I think everybody's excited, and that hype and that contagious, we're just doing something really cool and I can see the impact immediately, was what I was missing in past roles. I think that it's not a regional thing, but where you see the most probably indelible excitement is with the artist, because the artist goes, I used to make doodles in my notebook, or I was making t-shirts, and now all of a sudden I have a brand and I have actual commercial IP. And so teaching them how to think through that, and that if you want to take it beyond a comic strip and you want to build a whole world around this, you actually can, and Web3 makes it possible to do that.
Wow. Okay, so then that's interesting. Tell us more about how you approach the creator in that sense, because I would imagine, I guess the creators that I've spoken to and worked with, there tends to be a little bit of like an intimidation factor, or like they're kind of protecting their baby in a way. So how do you build that trust and then get close, and then I guess, and maybe this isn't a problem, so I don't know, I guess I'm almost looking for the specific answer, but how do you build that relationship and get them to want to commit to working with you guys? Because I'm imagining that that would take a lot of onboarding and effort on their side, and then are they somewhat committed once they're working?
No, I think if you look at what our business model is, so right now we're not in the services business. So, you know, we see the potential, and we can certainly introduce you to projects that have been successful before you, but we won't offer to blow up your project, right? Like that's up to you. But I guess what I'm saying is, at the moment, our tools are fairly technical. So just to use MetaPlex, you usually have an artist or a creator with a developer on their team. And so the excitement there is to kind of nudge them and say, okay, you just had your first mint, and actually you just sold out. You just sold 10,000 NFTs. What do you want to do with this stable, this community of people who just bought your work? And for a lot of these artists, they've never sold 100 of anything, let alone 10,000. And they need to think about these purchasers not as customers, but rather as like a fan base or as a community that they can then continue the conversation with. And so it's a mind shift that we try to coach them through. And in the future, I think you'll see a lot of different services pop up that is more geared toward maintaining that community, and then also geared towards non-technical creators.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the most popular features that you guys have? Because I've looked into a bunch of the, I guess, yeah, how you can pretty much get up and running a storefront in a matter of minutes. You
Yep.
can use the candy machine. So yeah, what are some of the most sticky features that you guys have created, or products? I don't know how you categorize them.
Yeah, so it's a little, again, it's like a different mindset than shipping a product in Web 2, because what we really do is we care for this protocol and we make it possible for you to build products on top of the protocol. But as you mentioned, Candy Machine got its name because in a very broad sense, you can kind of put in your Solana, put in your ID and your idea and your payment, and out pops your NFT. And so that's magical to people that have a great idea and want to be able to, make their collection quickly. And then Auction House makes it possible to participate in this notion of a market and liquidity and being able to, yeah. I would not be the one to say NFTs are junk food. Some of them are. I'm sure you've seen those projects too. But the Auction House makes it possible for you then to participate in liquidity, which is putting it out into market. So people are so excited about that. And I think for creators that have a community already, all they really need is a landing page and a storefront, or they'll use their own website, and they just need the technology to sort of initiate, the sale. So knowing that someone will handle that and it's kind of plug and play is really helpful there.
I will not claim to be an NFT expert or about the mechanisms that exist, but this did seem pretty novel and very kind of unique, right? Because I think before the launch of the Candy Machine V1, there wasn't a solution for that I was aware of. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's been sort of hybrid solutions that some may be overly indexed on Web 2, but then you still need a pretty technical team to plug you back into Web 3, even if you start in a browser. And so that's part of the challenge here, and a barrier to entry is that some of us remember, coding our MySpace page. Like, I don't want to age myself, but I think, yeah, I think being just technical enough to participate is where we would like this to go, so that, if you want to completely code your own marketplace, have at it, and you can work on top of our standard, and you will always have access to do that. But if you're filled with just big ideas and you want to become a creative entrepreneur, then our goal is to minimize that on-ramp so that you can create on Solana as fast as possible.
What are the most excited, and should I refer to them as projects versus features, if we're talking about MetaPlex specifically? Because I'm curious what you're most excited about. I think the releases that have happened in the last couple of months have been pretty monumental. Is there anything coming that you can talk about that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, so as you kind of hinted at, a lot of our roadmap, we can kind of only talk in the now, but last week we issued a request for comment on what we're calling Digital Asset Standard, or Digital Asset Standard 2, because it's really raising the bar and raising the standard on what we're doing today. And so again, we don't just go out the door and ship a product. For the most part, with the standard, we will put out a request for comment because the technology is owned by the community. And so we put out what we would envision a technical spec being for a roadmap. It's really highly technical, and our partners may pick and choose which applies the most relevantly to them. But we wait for comment and we initiate conversation there. And part of what is exciting is that it helps bring the NFT conversation past profile pictures. And so the standard exists so that we can build new forms of utility in there. So it moves beyond essentially like these bitmap files into supporting HTML and music and all kinds of stuff that are the backbones of culture and really bringing culture into Web3.
And of those use cases, which ones do you think will happen first? Or are they all happening at the same time?
Well, it's tough because it depends on who decides to build what, and that's not really up to us. But I think that we've seen a ton of interest from music and gaming, and just because gaming obviously is already sort of built in the metaverse, like Anybody who says the metaverse is new, it's like, if you've had, you know, a Facebook page or a Twitter profile, you've been kind of living in the metaverse for 15 years, right? So these gaming studios are already digitally native and pretty ready to adopt this stuff. And they're really smart about how they see NFTs serving as utility in a game. So what that might look like is I'm playing a role-playing game and I want to buy an NFT that will actually change what I'm wearing, or it will change one of the weapons that I have. And if I want to augment that or sell it to another user, I would be able to do that because it's transferring an NFT from one wallet to another.
Gotcha. So when thinking about how the community is involved so much in defining the roadmap and these priorities and such, how then how are you strategic about your like marketing plan or communication strategy? Because it seems like things change almost constantly. So
Right.
how do you anticipate changes before they happen? Because I'm sure historically maybe a marketing strategy would have more of like a month to month or a quarterly timeline, but this seems like almost a weekly shift in everything.
Yeah, I think that marketing means something different everywhere that you work. And so marketing's role at MetaPlex is really one of growth. So, you know, this request for comment is hard to wrap your mind around because we're not actually shipping anything at that time. We are shipping what our best version of a roadmap expectation might be. And then we are waiting for feedback. And then after that, we have to prioritize what to build, and that could take a year. So when you get down to launches or moments, I think it's really on marketing to understand the community and to celebrate wins that look like bug fixes or individual products that our team might build atop. So an example like Candy Machine. And the other thing is we're so young that we're one of the fastest growing creator platforms of all time. So the information that we had 6 months ago isn't really relevant to what we're trying to do today. So a marketing plan for us really looks like the internal work of focus groups and listening and making sure that we are pulling in feedback from the right places and keeping these use cases top of mind so that instead of looking at a technical spec, we're kind of igniting imagination for what you could build. It's kind of like if you had to market a Lego set and all you had were the bricks, you can either say like, here's the bricks, there's 24 of them, or you could say, hey, you can make a house, a car, or like these other 3 or 4 things.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So with partnering with other big projects and companies, where do you see the most like opportunity with partnerships? You mentioned OpenSea already. Are you guys like super tight with Magic Eden?
Yeah, you know, all of these marketplaces were built on top of our technology. And so as a marketer, like candidly, I have a lot of work to do so that when people hear Solana NFT, they understand that every single Solana NFT is a MetaPlex NFT. And that's a lot of work. That's challenging because we didn't tell that story, I think, well or early enough in our first year because everything was just taking off. And sometimes you make assumptions about what people know and what they don't. So yeah, we're in regular conversation with OpenSea and Fractal, Rarible, Magic Eden. And I think that I've never worked in a role where so much of my conversations happen outside of the company just so that we all have a shared understanding of what direction the industry is going.
So, you know, Google, obviously, we're super curious, like, what do we do? And so what do you think? What, having, you know, been around the block and seeing what all these different companies are exploring, how can Google help? And maybe what should our role be in this crazy Web3 world?
Oh man, that's like a big
wrong answer.
Let's see. I think a few things. Like I'm obviously very biased, but I think as you guys are forming this group, I think if you don't have someone from Waze in it who's on the community team, that should be like your first course of action because they've been doing this for, 15 years and no one seems to be connecting the dots that like working with volunteers all over the world to edit your map is really hard. And that's exactly what's happening in Web3. So tap that group. That's my first suggestion, because just the flow of working with the community and not upsetting them and listening to them, but not letting them run the plan, that's a really delicate dance, and it's prepared me well for this job. I do think that Google is great at shipping things that feel done and feel professional and beautiful, and that's not what this space looks like yet. And so on one hand, it can hurt you a little bit, because I think a lot of these projects don't run towards things that feel corporate. And on the other hand, if you can help them and kind of round out whatever their suite of services are, you know, you don't have to sit at the protocol level like we do, but you could definitely help them with essentially like small business tools. And there's a lot of need for that right now from these creators, because they entered as artists and they're leaving as business owners or entrepreneurs and are just not equipped to do that on the tool side.
Gotcha. What are maybe some other like low-hanging fruit that maybe you guys are also targeting?
That was low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
That was the advice. No, as I said, I think, you know, without revealing too much, I like this notion that anybody can be a builder is really exciting to me. And hey, Heather, cool. Good to hear from you. Yeah, like this notion that anybody can be a builder is just exciting, and anybody creative will have told you that forever, that putting beautiful ideas out in the world is creating, is building. But right now, historically, our core customer, our unpaid, you know, customer, are devs. And so we need to expand the conversation so that we can bring on the next 200 million wallets into this space. And that means making more people builders.
Totally agree with that, 100%. And I hope we do it. That's a dream I have. So on that note, I would be remiss if I didn't ask how you guys are feeling about the economic climate. Obviously, we are in a winter and it is tough. People are struggling. So what is the vibe at MetaPlex? And do you guys have any projections or forecasts, or like, how are you reacting to it all?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you 200, or I'm like reading these comments and talking at the same time. I'm sorry. You know, the honest positive and negatives of this. I think that in general, we have a really pedigreed team, which means that if you didn't come from crypto, you were working in banking or finance or like steady hands managing this company. So it is our role as managers to make sure that we keep up morale. And it's definitely challenging because a lot of the people that we interview have recently lost their jobs. A lot of people that we're friends with in the space or different projects, you know, have all of their income locked up in these exchanges that are going bankrupt. So it's like working in a fun house where the floor is just like doing this, and that's scary for a lot of people. So if you're a little more tenured in your career, you know that your job is to provide stability for people, both emotionally and also in like the fiscal decisions you make as a company. So we feel good. We have good runway, you know, for the next while. But I would say that when you look at what's happened recently, like frankly, a lot of the companies that didn't plan well or were kind of built like a house of cards are the ones that have stumbled. And so sometimes the bear market is kind of good because it gets rid of like the froth, and it gets rid of the projects that are not really here for the right reasons. And it's kind of exciting for us because you don't want to see someone lose their job, but it means that we're attracting these incredibly talented people who are still bullish on Web3. It's just that they're looking for a more stable project. And I think that's what we can provide. So, you know, I believe everything's cyclical. And I think that if you have a long-term view and you see what the possibilities of NFTs, because they really are just, they're contracts, right? There's no reason that the web wouldn't move in that direction, because this is the chapter as we evolve the technology overall.
I couldn't agree with you more. We've cleaned out the floor, all the leverage in the system is slowly being taken away. You talked a bit about, so it sounds like kind of your vision. Do you have any other maybe wishes. If you had a magic wand and you're like, I could make this happen, what would it be? Could be for yourself, could be for Metaplex. It doesn't matter. There's no wrong answer. It's a very big question.
Really good question. I think that, I guess I would love to, I mean, one, I'd love to scale my own team. I would love like a limitless marketing budget and like a huge amount of people to get into the community and help them understand why this is so special, the technology itself of Web3. But I guess something more practical is like, I would love to just buy time, because I do think in this kind of a market, you have people that were just about to quit their job and launch their NFT project or something, or do it on the weekends. And now financially, that's just not a reality for them. Because really, like a lot of these builders and creators, especially in Solana, the reason they're here is because it's a low barrier to entry. It's a very low cost chain. It's eco-friendly and it's fast. And so you're here because it's affordable and you can make an affordable project. And so to now all of a sudden lose your income or your savings means that we might lose you as a creator right now. And that's such a shame. So I wish I could buy more time so that especially the folks that are underprivileged or the communities that we've been trying to celebrate that don't normally get to participate in things like this, I think we'll probably lose them first. And we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen.
Gosh, that's a really good point. I mean, it does make a lot of sense. Like as a lot of the greed in the system gets wiped out, also the dedicated contributors that are really just on their last legs will get cleaned out. That's an unfortunate circumstance. Julie, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. This was awesome.
I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
We'll stay in touch. It sounds like maybe some bridges will be built from this. And everybody else, have a wonderful day.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.